and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be looking into the very strange disappearance of 19-year-old Luke Durbin, who disappeared in Ipswich in England in 2006. Luke went missing in the early hours of Friday the 12th of May 2006 in the centre of Ipswich. It's a very strange disappearance because he's spotted on CCTV a couple of times. He goes into the local train station and the local cab or taxi office and does speak to a couple of people who work in these locations. He's seen by members of the public, but after these sightings and him being caught on the CCTV, that's it. He's not seen again. So I'd just like to give you a quick bit of background about Luke Durbin. As I said, he was a 19-year-old boy or man. He was from Hollesley in the UK, and he was known to often go out in Ipswich on nights out with his friends. He'd started a job around 6 weeks before he went missing. I believe it was in a greengrocer's, or if not, in a local store that perhaps sold food. He'd been really enjoying the job. Something to note now at the start of this, I'd like to tell you that he had a lot of wages to collect that he would have been getting the day after he went missing. He didn't take the wages. He never shows up for work the next day. He doesn't take the money. So that could rule out that Luke was running away from life. As you would imagine, if he'd been running away, he would have collected his wages. Luke went out, as far as we're aware, with two of his friends that night. One was a friend called Alex, who worked in London as a chef and had come up for the night to visit family and friends. I'm not sure of the name of the third friend. Something to note is that they all travel from Woodbridge, one of the friends' houses, into the centre of Ipswich, and Luke leaves his motorbike and also his mobile phone at the friend's house. Now, bearing in mind this was 2006, quite a long time ago now, not everybody took their mobile phones out with them. You definitely didn't really have the internet on them like you do now, and it just wasn't necessarily to take your mobile out. He'd left his motorbike there, as him and his friends were all going to be making their way into Ipswich, and I guess because they were perhaps going to be drinking in the nightclub that they were heading to, perhaps that's why the motorbike was left at his friend's house. The nightclub that they were all heading to in the centre of Ipswich is one by the name of Zest, and back in 2006 that nightclub had quite a nasty reputation. There was often fights there, drug dealing, and all sorts of sort of shady things had been going on in that nightclub. Something else to note is that a couple of other people go missing after going to that nightclub in the centre of Ipswich in the next year, and within months of Luke going missing himself. In the December of the same year that Luke goes missing, December 2006, someone is shot dead in the club. It really doesn't sound like a very nice nightclub. I can tell you it has since closed. The police forced them to close because of all the shady things that went on, and it's hardly surprising that the nightclub had to close down. As I said, someone was savagely murdered there. Now, I'm not fully certain whether at this point that they get into the nightclub, all three of them are there. Something that I am certain of is that Alex and Luke do enter the nightclub, but what we do know is that the third friend, who I don't know the name of, goes home. Now, whether he ever ends up in the nightclub, I'm not sure. Why he goes home, I don't know. Whether the three of them or him and one of the other lads had a row, I'm not really sure what happened there. Now, Alex, the friend that did stay out with Luke that evening, says that he went to the bar to get drinks. He came back to where he had left Luke in the nightclub and he was gone. Now, he presumed, Luke being a young 19-year-old man, perhaps he'd met a girl in the club, they'd had a drink and maybe a dance, and they'd left together. Perhaps that was something that had happened before on other nights out with Luke, and his friend didn't think anything of it, had a look for him around the nightclub. I believe he leaves the nightclub, has a look for him outside, can't see him, or cannot see Luke, so he goes home. Now, after this point, Luke has left the nightclub. That is proven and known from CCTV footage of him. He heads to the train station and tries to get a train home, but because it's, 2 or 3 in the morning, there aren't any trains home. He then travels to a taxi shop or office to try and get a taxi. Unfortunately, when he gets there, he hasn't got any money, so the taxi company won't get him a taxi. What they do offer to do is to call his mum and see if she can pay over the phone, maybe by debit or credit card, or perhaps say that she'll pop in with some money so that they could take him home. What is extremely sad and really, really tragic is that Luke turned down that offer from the taxi firm and leaves the taxi office. Now, something to note is between the time that he's at the train station and the taxi cab rank, apparently it was about a 15-20 minute walk from one place to the other. He's gone for a good hour. Now, there isn't any other CCTV footage of him after these two places, apart from him crossing a road. I'll include some of these photos and footage later in the video. So where does he go for the hour? Does he go into another building? But bearing in mind it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the centre of Ipswich. I've been to Ipswich and it's not really a very busy place in the middle of the night. What offices or buildings would have been open? I suspect Luke may have met up with a friend. Perhaps he'd arranged to do that, and maybe that's where he went. As I said before, Luke had left his mobile phone at his friend's house in Woodbridge in Suffolk. Because of that, there was no, I don't know if he even had a phone that would have had GPS tracking on it back in 2006, but he couldn't be traced from his mobile phone. Now, it is said that he didn't have his passport with him and that wasn't taken. So the chances of Luke running away from home to start a new life somewhere, get his best life abroad perhaps, were slim. But something to note is that around a year or so before this happened, Luke had run away from home at about the age of 17 or 18. He went to live in France for a week. Now, whether he was by himself or with anybody else, I don't know. But he did keep in contact with his sister during this period of time. And his sister and mum were aware that he'd gone away. I don't think he'd told his mum what was happening to start with, but he did tell his sister. So he ran away from home, but he told them where he was so that they weren't worried. So the fact that we were aware of that leads me to believe that Luke wouldn't do that a second time without telling the sister and the mum where he was. So I don't buy the theory that Luke may have run away from home. Now, there are numerous witness reports of people seeing Luke that night, and also, interestingly, there is a report of someone seeing him the next day when he is actually missing. He was supposedly seen, I think it's meant to have been a Renault Megane car, and he was meant to be seen in the car. Now, the witness that gave this report to the police didn't say that he looked stressed, that he was with other people, perhaps young people, maybe they were friends of his that, you know, his other friends didn't know, and that he seemed okay. Now, that's never really been confirmed. I don't know whether this witness statement collaborates with any CCTV of the car passing through Ipswich, and I do believe that the car was seen in Ipswich, so that's a bit of a strange one. Something else to note is that a white, very old-fashioned Volvo car was seen in the area on CCTV around the time that Luke is last spotted on CCTV. This car that is seen, the white Volvo, Luke isn't spotted on the CCTV footage of the Volvo, but the Volvo car, interestingly, is captured on CCTV in an area that Luke had been in not long before he goes missing. So a timeline of events of the early hours of Friday the 12th of March 2006 is that at approximately 2:30 to 3 a.m. Luke is seen at the train station where he's not able to get a train because there aren't any running, and around 3:45 a.m., around an hour later, he's seen at this taxi office, which apparently was about a 15 or 20 minute walk from the train station. As I said, around 40 minutes to an hour is missing from what he did, where he's not caught on camera. We don't know where he goes. Did someone pick him up in a car? You know, what happened? Where was he for that hour? Which leads me to believe that he could have met up with someone that he knew. I believe that roughly the time that Luke is last spotted on CCTV in Ipswich on the morning of Friday the 12th of May 2006 is around 4 a.m. Then he is never seen again on CCTV, other than the one reported witness statement that said they saw him the next day in a Renault Megane with other young men. Now, something to note, I don't believe any bank accounts of Luke's were touched. He never goes home. He never collects his motorbike from his friend's house. He never goes to work the next day. He doesn't go back to work to collect his wages. He doesn't tell his employer that he's not going to turn up for work. He doesn't tell his mum or his sister that he's not coming home, and he was very close to his mum or sister, so this all seems very strange for a young 19-year-old man to just not come home one night. Now, sadly, Luke wasn't reported missing as soon as he is officially missing, because his friend Alex presumes that he's gone home or hooked up with a girl from the nightclub. His mum, Luke's mum, was staying around one of her friends for the night because Luke was meant to be staying at one of his male friends that night. So when he doesn't come home to Ipswich, it doesn't matter. He wasn't meant to come home. Also, his mum isn't there, so she doesn't really realise anything's wrong. And if she'd been home, she wasn't expecting him home, so he still wouldn't have been reported missing. I believe it takes a good day or two for the alarm to be raised to the police that Luke is a missing person. Now, there are numerous theories around on the internet as to how Luke could have gone missing. I'm going to run through some of them later on, but something I'd like to mention now, and again, I have no evidence or facts regarding this, it's just things I've heard from my research, is that Luke may have been doing drugs with his friends that night, and he may have been dealing drugs. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, could he have been in trouble with a drug dealer? Could he have upset the wrong person? Could he have had a debt that he couldn't pay off? Could that be why he's disappeared? So the fact that he may have been doing drugs that night, and he may have been dealing drugs, or if not dealing them, at least consuming them himself, did he owe someone some money that he couldn't afford to pay back? And had he pissed off the wrong person? Now, something to note, something that happens in England and has happened, and I guess happens in other countries in Europe and the world as well, is that men often go out for the night, get drunk or off their face on drugs, and end up in a river or a body of water, dead, drowned. Now, it's a horrible thing, but often men, if they walk home by themselves, not really sure what they're doing, they're a bit unsteady on the feet, a bit drunk, and they do often end up falling in water. Now, could Luke have tried to walk home that night, even though it was a long way home, but because he didn't have any money to get home? He tried the train station, he tried to get a taxi, he didn't get anywhere with either road that he goes down to get transport home. So does he attempt to walk home? Now, could he have fallen into a body of water, like I said? Another theory, could he have been run over by someone that night? A hit and run, or not necessarily a hit and run, a hit, pick up the body and take it with you and get rid of it somewhere. Now, excuse me, I know that's an awful thing to say, but could someone have run Luke over that night? Someone that was out drunk in Ipswich, that had been out for the night, had a few drinks, shouldn't have been driving, knocks the poor lad over, wants to cover it up. Sad as it is another theory that's out there. So at the moment, could Luke have run away from home? Had he pissed off the wrong drug dealer and got a drug debt? Did someone run him over when he's walking home? Does he have an accident on the way home, falling into water or getting stuck somewhere, and his body's never been found after all these years? That's a bit of a hard one to believe, but it could be true. And one of the most saddest ones is, could Luke have taken his own life and his body has just never been found? Now, that is a theory. He had been feeling down in about the year leading up to his disappearance, but his mum and sister said he was back on track, he was back on form, having a laugh with his friends, being an average 19-year-old lad, wanting to have a good time and socialise with his friends and have a laugh and a joke. As I said, he was very close to his mum and sister, so I feel if he wasn't happy and he needed to get away from everything, he would have told them. Even if he had a drug debt with a drug dealer that he couldn't pay, I feel he would have told his family, so I don't buy the theory that Luke took his own life. Now, I'm not sure what the most plausible theory is here, but I do think drug dealers perhaps having a grudge with him because he owed them money for whatever reason, whether it be dealing or buying the drugs and getting them on tick, as it's called, I think, where you don't pay. Could it be that? I just don't know. It's really hard to know what happened to Luke, but his mum and sister have waited so many years to get some answers about his disappearance. You know, 15 years of waiting, not knowing. It must be really, really difficult. So if anyone out there that's watching, not here, it's just me, but if any of you guys know anything about the disappearance of Luke and you've never said anything, or you know someone that knows something, please prompt them to speak to the police or the local authorities. Get them or yourself to contact Crime Stoppers. You can do all this anonymously, and you could give a sister and a mother of Luke's family and his friends that are all still out there wondering where he is, some kind of closure. Now, even if Luke is dead and something dreadful happened to him, his family still would like to know, so they could have a funeral for the poor lad. You know, I can't imagine what it must be like to have a family member go missing and never know what happened to them. It must be so heartbreaking and psychologically so hard to process and deal with. You know, is it easier to think they're dead, or is it easier to pretend they're alive somewhere and happy, but, you know, they just wanted a new life that was away from you and your family? I don't know what one's best, but it's horrific either way. Something else to note is that the year after Luke goes missing, in August 2007, someone in Brixton in London attempted to use Luke's identity for some kind of fraud. I think they were trying to do some internet shopping, something along them lines, and they were trying to use Luke's name. Now, how they had Luke's name and Luke's details, I don't know. Could his identity have been stolen? Could he have had his driving licence, or perhaps the licence that he would have had to ride his motorbike in the UK with him that night? And if he was abducted or come to some kind of harm, were his details, perhaps any card that would have had his photo on for the motorbike license. Was the motorbike license stolen? Any other ID, bank cards that he might have had on him stolen from him that night? And then perhaps they've been sold on and then used in London. Does seem strange that over a year passed, but I think perhaps if the details were sold on, perhaps they weren't sold on immediately. And if they were sold on, perhaps the person that bought the details of Luke's private personal details, and then sold them on to somebody else. Could they have waited for a year after he goes missing, or just over a year, to make sure that no one suspects anything strange? But obviously these people were caught, and I think they were arrested and charged with fraud, which is really good. But what's really sad is this must have got Luke's mum and sister and friends and other family members' hopes up that he was going to be found. Just to give you a bit more information about Luke, he was 5'10" and of slim build. He had sort of light to mid-brown dark hair. He was a very social lad. He liked to have a laugh. And I'd like to read you the description of what he was wearing, but I just want to make sure I get it right. He had a black or a grey long sleeve shirt on, and I just want to check this information, and a purple and grey white stuff sweatshirt on at the time. He was also wearing tatty looking faded denim jeans that had some sort of motive on the right side thigh area. He was wearing grey chocolate suede moccasin style shoes. Now, were any of you in Ipswich on the night of Thursday the 11th of May into Friday the 12th of May in 2006? Did you live near Ipswich in 2006? Did you know Luke Durbin? If you know anything about this case, as I said, please go to the authorities, because for a family to get closure after all this time, whether good or bad news, it would just give them closure and maybe end some of the heartbreak, maybe prolong it, but at least get the family and the friends some answers. I really hope this can be solved one day. I really, really hope with advances in technology, with sort of CCTV, cameras technology, mobile phones, you know, all that sort of thing, the internet, what I'm doing here. Let's just hope somewhere, somehow, the disappearance of Luke Durbin one day can finally be solved.